Okay, thank you. Can you pass me the broom quick?
What?
The broom. Thank you. I'm gonna just do that, okay, so. Right, see you in a bit. Hello, 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 good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Mobility Magic on a Monday. Hopefully I've got the right video angle today. Hopefully you can see and hear me. I hope you had a really good weekend, and I apologise firstly for the issue with last week's technology in regards to reposting the video after the session. Hopefully I've corrected that today. I've got two cameras recording me today, and if there's any issues, hopefully I'll be able to post the other video. Just a small technical difficulty, as I said, so apologies to those who wanted to watch it on the replay. Hopefully you can do that today. But for today, we're actually going to cover off the same thing we did last week to make sure we get it on film for those of you that wanted to watch it on replay. Because we had a really good session in regards to working out the lateral aspect of your body, working out all the kinks and tightness. I'm just going to turn my other camera just so I can catch the whole room. And getting a release at the site. Because many people were saying that they had issues with walking gait, hip shift, and tightness through the hip and lower leg. So we're going to work that out. We're going to start with a little bit of work with lacrosse ball, as usual, starting from the floor upwards, and we're going to work into some, maybe a little bit of foam rolling and some work on a wall. So make sure you have a clear wall available, because we're going to do a little bit of piece at the start, and then I'm going to add a little bit piece of kind of network at the end as well, because just to make up for last time, because again, technology let me down, so I hope we can cover all of that stuff off. But without further ado, let's get started. Going to turn the comments off, and love to see all the regulars. And if you have any comments, anything you'd like us to add or do for next week's Mobility Magic, feel free to add it in the comments to the video that I will definitely post this week after the session, alright? So, lacrosse ball to the foot, we know it's a really good way of just opening up our fascial lines. They all tend to meet or congregate at the feet, and it's just a good way of starting the session with a focus at the start. So, for this one, we start at the base of the big toe, downward pressure, probably an 8 or so out of 10 in terms of pressure today. For those of you who haven't done this before, probably like a 5 or a 6 is good. And we're just applying some downward pressure into that lacrosse ball, just to open up that plantar fascia on the bottom of the foot, which is an area, as I say, where a lot of the interconnecting areas of the fascial tissue and fascial lines tend to meet at this particular point under the foot. If you can open it up early in the session, it often helps to alleviate some of the pressure that kind of rides up the body. If you can imagine, it's the first point of contact with the floor. So we're just kind of opening out the foot. Now we're today just gently rolling back and forward with a little light pressure, let's say 7 or 8 out of 10. And we are just starting to work our way out across the front of the foot, out towards the middle, and then out towards the side. And because we're working laterally today, working on everything that kind of makes up the lateral aspect of our body, it makes sense that you want to focus a lot of your rolling on that lateral aspect of the foot where it can actually get really, really tight and uncomfortable. So if you find any pressure points, any knots, let's spend a little bit more time on this area of the foot. So take note, if you need to come back and work on those points later during the day, feel free to do so too. These can be really, really good to more frequently work out than to more aggressively work out. So let's just work onto the other foot. So we've done our right foot, my right foot. If it's your left foot, absolutely fine. Just remember that I will try and remember to reverse the instructions for some of you, but I'll obviously make sure that you can follow along. So we're starting below our big toe on our left foot. My left foot could be your right foot if it's in mirror image. So let's move across. And we're putting downward pressure. Now, if you find these spots that are extra tender, just back the pressure off and maybe bring your toes up to the ceiling, maybe splay your toes, try and get nice and wide. Just imagine you're trying to tease that tissue apart, we're just trying to open it up, okay? Doesn't need to be too aggressive. So just back to forwards, working out to the middle of the foot and back out. Tend not to roll too aggressively in this area, because often if you bruise your foot, it's really uncomfortable walking and you're going to undo all the great work you've already done. So not too aggressive. Now let's work out to the side of our foot. Again, we're working on the lateral aspect of our body, so it makes sense that you want to open up this side of your foot. We want a little bit of vertical pressure, but we're also working it back to the side as well. Now, again, if you find any tight spots, any areas that you want to work out, any areas that you feel could benefit from more rolling, feel free to come back to this later, because the feet is a great area to do multiple times a day, especially if you're sat down a lot, standing at a desk, wearing high heels, that sort of thing, or work boots. That can be really beneficial too. So, working with the ball against the wall, we're going to do a couple of things here. So, as you can see, I will try to, I'll probably end up doing this twice on one side so I don't turn around and face away from you, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. We're taking our lacrosse ball. If you don't have a lacrosse ball, you can use a foam roller, that works equally as well. Ball against the wall, and we're actually going to line it up with, you can see where my pocket is here. I'm just above the pocket, slightly more anteriorly. We're working into that kind of TFL position, so it's going to be just below the bony bit, and you'll have a lot of tenderness if you have any lateral tension in that area there. So we want to start low, we want to put our hip into the wall, and you want to make sure that you're able to move this inside leg, so that in this case it's my left leg, and I'll be demonstrating twice on my left side, is able to move freely, and I'm able to apply direct pressure into the wall by leaving my right leg out, okay? So with this one, all we're going to do is we're going to apply direct pressure into the wall. So for some of you it could be that I'm just applying direct pressure into the wall. It could be that you were just pushing your hip into the wall, and that's enough for you, and you're just going to take nice deep breaths. Just nice deep breaths, and it could be that you're here for a couple of minutes, literally start a timer, a couple of minutes, even 2 or 3 works, and suddenly you feel a release in the hip. For others it could be that we have to add in a little bit of a lean away, so I'm pushing my hip into the wall, and I can either lean over the top, or I can reach up the wall. I have a bulkhead here, so I'm just going to ignore that. But if I was to reach up and over, apply some pressure into the wall, or reach my hand up the wall, or bring it over the top, or even lean back slightly away from the wall, that works great, because now I'm adding a little bit more pressure. And because I pin that tissue down at the hip with that TFL, I'm feeling it kind of open up into my side. So I'm feeling a nice stretch as I reach across, adding in a little bit of body weight. Now, if you have any restriction that kind of works its way down here, you'll start to see that because my shirt is kind of caught, it's a little bit like our fascia underneath our arm into our serratus and our lats and anything lateral. So that will kind of help loosen up. Now, we can also add a dynamic aspect. So if you move the ball a little bit into a new area, just for the sake of the next piece, we can also add some movement into this. So put your arm against the wall, we're going to bring this leg back, so we've got a nice long rotated line, and we're going to bring this leg up. And as you do that, I want to put some external pressure from this leg into the wall, and we just kind of get this hip to kind of move, and you can even bring it back a little bit diagonally as long as that ball doesn't come away from the wall. And as you do that, I want you to lean away slightly as well. So adding all the things together, it's a bit like, you know, pat your head, rub your tummy, but this should enable you to open up that tissue a little bit. So we're just kind of stretching, we're turning our body a little bit, stretching and turning. And if you want to, you can even bring your body a little bit closer to the wall. So this is just another variation, and we're just going to lean away. Okay, so let's turn around. I will do the same thing on the same side, just to guide you through it, and hopefully I remember all the steps again this time. But first step is we're going to pin the ball against the wall. So if you haven't already switched around, please do so, because it will overwork one side like I do and feel really long for the rest of the day and unbalanced. But you're going to turn around. So you can also do this with a door frame as well. You can just use the door frame to kind of stretch and push the opposite hip away. But for now, we're actually doing the same side hip as a lateral stretch. So pinning the tissue down, I'm going to put some pressure into the wall with a lacrosse ball. As you can see, it's around my TFL. That's the section of musculature which controls the IT band. So if you have any issues, any tension in your tissues, and you have any lateral knee uncomfortable pain or anything like that, any knee issues, this can be a big win for any of you that have those issues. So leaning into the wall, we are going to put some pressure. We're going to push, push, push. Make sure that this outside foot is far enough away, so if it's not, walk it away. Apply some pressure into the wall. That's step one, so you can wait a couple of minutes for that. So if you're on replay, pause it now, do this one, let your tissue kind of relax, and then go on to the next stage, okay? Next step, we're going to start to lean away slightly. We're actually leaning away diagonally, and we're turning our body to open it, and we can even add in a little bit of an arm as well, and lean it across and back, as we kind of tease open this side of our body, okay? So you feel it kind of open up from the hip, all the way up into this area, the intercostals and the serratus kind of area, into the lats, and then we're leaning away. You'll use this outside arm, so reach down. If it's safer for you, you can just reach up the wall. Obviously I have a bulkhead, but if you can reach up the wall, that's fine. And now, we're going to add in a little bit of dynamic work as well. So you can take the pressure off for a second, you find a new spot. If you're on the same side as me, fine. If you've switched around, which is what you should have done, or you're concentrating more on one side for now, that's also fine. Find a new spot, because obviously as that tissue opens up, you're going to want to find a new area of restriction. And let's do a more dynamic stretch. So again, find your anchor point with this outside foot, so you can apply some direct pressure to the wall. Let's bring this leg back, and let's bring it up and forward. And if you're watching kind of what I'm doing with the hip here, and the foot, this should remind you a little bit of your kind of highest running point. If you're running at full speed, it's probably a little bit below this. We want this extra range. And if you're at the bottom of a squat, roughly it should be in line with the hip crease, right? Your hip should be in line with the knee. So this can be a really great place to kind of train the brain. Now I want to add a little bit of a lean. So we're going to spend too long on the side. We're just going to lean away as we bring this leg back. So we're creating this nice long line, which is extension through the body, which will help you with this walking gait, with this running line that everyone wants to work on. So let's come down to the floor. We're going to work a little bit on some loosening up. For those of you that still have restrictions in your side, we're going to work a little bit on foam rolling it out. Doesn't always work for everyone, but it's one option. If it helps, it's great. Foam rolling can be really useful if you spend the right amount of time in each area. So we are going to start with a little bit of opening up of our intercostals into our kind of lat area. So we're laying laterally. Make sure I'm in the right position on film. I'm going to start on my left side, because that's kind of where we've done all the work, just to fully open it, and then we'll switch onto the right side. So if you want to follow along, we're going to start up in this top kind of corner, where a lot of the musculature kind of meets, where my arm, my serratus, my intercostals, my muscles that kind of make up my shoulder girdle tend to meet in this area too. So if I was to kind of try and raise my arm, it might feel a little bit tight in this area, but if we let our weight kind of sink down into this area and I bring my arm across even to help with that, I feel that pressure kind of work down to that teres, kind of minor, major kind of area, and I feel it kind of start to open up a little bit. So if you have any overhead restrictions, can't quite bring your arm overhead on this left side, my left could be your right, you might find it starts to open up a little bit. And again, big breaths into this area. I'm starting to try and help that tissue to open up. Start to find that tissue, find that spot. Use your arm as a rudder, so use that top arm as a rudder if you need to, just to find out where you need to get that downward pressure. Sometimes that extra few grams of pressure is enough to kind of help tease it, open it up. Now if you notice, I'm not aggressively rolling, I'm actually using the foam roller as a kind of a pressure point to put my weight into, and that's probably a better application of the foam roller in a lot of circumstances. Don't really want to aggressively roll. I think it's probably wrongly named. It probably shouldn't be called a foam roller because that implies the wrong use to these types of tools. Rolling aggressively isn't the right way to use it. So, coming off that point, we're going to actually turn slightly. So now we're a little bit more facing the ceiling. We're getting into just on the other side of the shoulder blade into the lat just a little bit. And this time we are going to roll slightly, but just to find a point where we need a little bit of pressure. So I'm around the same area, but I'm a little bit more posterior on just underneath the shoulder blade. This is an area that we can kind of hang out if we need to, and then just apply that same pressure by just rocking our hips and just sitting into that position, okay? And if you need to support your head with your hands, great. Obviously want to do that, want to make sure we don't get any neck strain. We're going to work on that later, that area. But for now, we're just using that lean, that arm as a rudder, add some extra pressure, find that point where you have a little bit of tension. And let's switch sides. We're going to keep switching, so feel free to either stay in the same position if you want to work more on that same side, or like me, if you want to work and balance yourself out, you can switch on to the other side now. Or if you're on replay, you can go back, rewatch the same section and do the same thing again. All the while remembering to do more breathing, which is something that I'm not doing enough right now, but obviously I'm leading the class. So function of breathing is very important. This one, or these stretches, will probably actually help open up your chest a little bit and probably make it a little bit easier for you to breathe. So on this side, I'm going to add in a couple more elements just to kind of add tools into your toolbox, a couple of things for you to think about. And we're reaching our arm, so my top arm, you can see here, I'm reaching back as far as I can just to open up this area on top here. Hold on. Open up this area on top here as I reach all the way to the back. Reach. And I'm just opening my chest up slightly. Opening. And I should feel this kind of area underneath my arm start to open up. So into that teres, major, minor, into that intersection where my lats, intercostals kind of meet in that corner. Okay? Use my arm as a rudder. I can reach over the top if I wish to. Reaching right up. And over. I can start to ease my way over. I can even add a little bit of dynamic work if I want to, just reaching up and over the top, breathing in and out. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach as far as I can, because I'm actually stretching my bottom arm up just to add a little bit more tension across the side that's being pinned, and now I'm starting to reach. So you can see that I'm adding some tension here, I'm reaching away, I'm pushing down to the floor if I need to, and I'm reaching up and over. So I should get a stretch on both sides this time, maybe even a little bit of a stretch in my T-spine, which is an area which we'll do probably in a couple of sessions time. So next point, we are going to turn slightly just to find a new area. We're reaching. as far as we can, and we are just using our hand as a rudder. So I'm coming a little bit more posterior. I'm feeling a little bit of tension on the other side, kind of underneath my scap. So I'm going to reach up a little bit. I can support my head if I need to. Either arm is fine. And I'm just trying to find that area of tension. And I'm just going to add a little bit of a roll as I reach away. And that should be good. Awesome. So another area for us to consider kind of rolling out could be, or adding tension could be the same way that we did on the wall. And that is, we could use the foam roller on our hip if you want it a little bit more passively. So if you found the wall a little bit too aggressive for you, you can also do the same thing in a laying position, and that works fantastically well. So I'll show you that as a modification for you, just quickly. So a little bit more passively, you could just lay on the foam roller and just work that hip open. Notice again that my position is just slightly above the pocket. On this side it's a little bit more posterior to the pocket, and you can even work into those glute med area that gets caught up within that lateral aspect. So if you find that laying in this position, you have a little bit of tension just working into that posterior area, into your glute, this is a great place to hang out, just laying in this position for 3 or 4 minutes, give you best Burt Reynolds, and just kind of hang out for a few minutes. I wouldn't worry about rolling. I would just sit in a position which feels mildly uncomfortable and just kind of let it open up. And you can do the same on either side. So the next level to this stretch, we can add in a little bit of work with, let's say, a bench or a chair. And we can use this to elevate the stretch just a little bit. So if you're someone who has gained a lot more range through doing either variation of the stretch, let's say this is kind of a level 1, this is a level 2, we can add in a little bit of a level 3, which is using a chair, and we can bring our body underneath the chair. So I have a chair here, my arm is resting on the chair, and again this is a little bit more of an advanced stretch. I'm bringing this leg, this leg that's on my near side underneath the chair, and I'm using this front leg, which in this case is my left leg, to balance, and I'm just using this to open up. I'm just dipping my weight down, and I find a nice deep stretch through this hip, and I can just rotate. So this would be kind of be a more advanced stretch for those of you who have a little bit more upper body strength to use. You can also do this quite passively if you have a good balance, just letting this hip kind of open up. And you can even use that upper body as a rudder, just kind of help you steer into the stretch. And then obviously you can switch around and do the other side. Again, it's a little bit more of an advanced stretch. So if you were to do this in series, I would start on the ground as a level 1 stretch. You start on the wall as a level 2 stretch. This could be your level 3 stretch. This is for someone who has really good range, already has a little bit of mobility in this area, but just wants to add that last little piece into the stretch. And we're just passively letting our hip drop down and kind of open up. So again, the stretch you should feel on the leg that's underneath, threading through. The weight is just dropping down towards the floor. I'm feeling my hip kind of start to open up as I let it drop. And I can even lean my torso away just to assist that stretch as it passively opens up. And in this position, again, just make sure you breathe in. That's really, really important. Awesome. Pushing down into the floor a little bit with the heel, just letting that hip open up. So again, level 1 could be a foam roller on the floor, passive stretch. Level 2 could be the wall with a lacrosse ball, just kind of opening up passively on the wall, a little bit of dynamic work as well. And then we have a chair as well, where we can just passively drop a hip down, which could be a little bit more of an advanced stretch if you have the range. Okay, so now let's do another floor-based dynamic stretch for opening up the hips and low back. So we're going to come into our core 4 position, which we've done many times before. We're coming to that later section where we are in a sideline position. So if you remember, when we start off the series in this position, we're doing our waves. If you've seen our previous videos, otherwise you can skip back and check those out on replay. But for now, we're actually going to drop down into this kind of sideline bridge position with our legs slightly less than 90-90. We're actually going to do some dynamic work. I'm going to make sure I'm far enough away from the wall so I'm not going to hit it, but all we're going to do on this one is we're going to do some spinal rotation, just to, again, tease out the last few pieces of this. Piece in the hip, this lateral aspect, this TFL, this area that feeds the lat into the low back, and the QL as well, and then we just kind of capture any other tissue that's kind of caught up. So, hand up to the ceiling, we're going to thread the needle underneath, we're going to breathe in, breathe out as we come up. So we're breathing in, and as we come underneath, we're trying to stretch as much as we can. We're threading that hand underneath, leaning forward, feeling stretch through our low back and hip, coming up. So you can do this as dynamically as you want. You can go fast if it's pre-warm-up, you can go slow if you are just working through the stretches. This is a great way to dynamically kind of work and warm up that low back. Turning in. Pushing that back foot into the floor. So if I was to push this into the floor, I probably feel a little bit more of a stretch through the hip. And now we're just bringing this arm over the top. So if you've already done some pre-stretches with the roller, with the wall, then you should feel this a little bit more range on the shoulder already. You should feel a little bit more of a stretch. And we're just bringing this arm around. So we're kind of doing this back crawl, arm swing. Adjust your position as you need to, just to be more comfortable. Let that head hang down. Letting that hip. So as this arm comes over the top, I should feel its deepest stretch through the back here into my hip. And let's switch sides. Again, lesson 1990. I'm bringing my elbow down to the floor, so I'm in a slight bridge position. Hopefully my arm doesn't disappear too far off the screen, but we are stretching back over the top. Should feel a little bit of a stretch on the hip here. And first of all, we're going to thread the needle actually, sorry. We're going to bring our arm underneath. We're rotating through the hip, so you might feel it in a different area this time, not a problem. You are allowed to be different on each side, and we are rotating under, and we are stretching off the ceiling. So we're breathing in, we are breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. And we're stretching this hip, we're opening this hip up. Now you might feel it kind of work its way up into the sides of your ribs, you might feel it in the low back, you might feel it in the hip a little bit more. All is good. You are going to work whatever is bothering you out. We're mobilizing whatever is important to you. So next part, we're going to reach up and over. We can even add in a little bit of a hip lift as well to add in more of a stretch. I'm a little bit more mobile on this side now because I've obviously done a little bit more work on my left side, so I have a lot more range, and I'm just reaching over the top, adding this dynamic rotation through the shoulder as it opens up. I'm just allowing that shoulder to come backwards and forwards, whatever works best for you. And now we're coming back to the center, just kind of seeing how we feel. And we're just going to come up to a standing position now. So we've got 2 more stretches to go with this one. We're going to do a perennial stretch. We're going to do a little bit of a lateral neck work as well. So, perennial stretch. If you have any issues with the side of your shin, if you have tightness in your calf, if you find that you have any tension that works its way into the side of your heel, this could be a good one for you. So, a couple of things to do here. First of all, this is our level 1. We're going to work through 2 levels on this one. We can turn our foot and just have a little bit of weight downwards on the side, and then we can just lean away, and that could be our level 1-ish. This is going to add a little bit of tension up the side too, and if you want to add in a little bit of a turn, that's okay too. We're concentrating on the perennial, so the bottom of the foot, this area that kind of feeds up, also known as the fibularis, that's an area that a lot of people get caught up in but don't realize that they are caught up. So pressure, turn the foot slightly, and let's move on to the other side. Don't want to spend too long, you can get really nervy really quickly in that area. So we're just turning our body, we can shift our hip as well, we can even lean a little bit in this area, but the main thing is, can you feel a stretch in the side of your shin, okay? Side of your shin, side of your shin. Going to take it up to a level 2 now. So imagine that we're doing a lean forward, pushing our hips back. So it's a hip hinge. For those of you that know, you'll probably have done this in personal training or in the gym, or maybe it makes a part of your session. We're doing a hip hinge towards the foot. We're just sliding down. So it's a little bit more like a Romanian deadlift. We are just working on the hamstrings and pushing our hip back. Make sure that your foot is more underneath you. You can bend this outside knee if you need to, pushing this hip backwards, and then once you get to a hamstring stretch, that's when you lean forward just to add that tension into the perennials there. So, same thing other side, just going to show you one more time, just for clarity. Make sure that you have your level 1 stretch. Then we're going to hip hinge, pushing our hips back, bending this outside leg. Once you feel a stretch in the hamstrings, that's when you're going to shift your weight forward and add some more tension into that fibrillaris. And as you lean forward into that area, you'll feel it work its way down into that shin. So rinse and repeat with that one. Not too much tension, you don't want to add too much into that one. But for now, we are going to do a little bit of neck work. So should I pull up my chair? Hope you can see me right there. And a little bit of lateral neck work. So we'll work through the both sides. A little bit of the bonus for you from last week for those of you that joined us but didn't get the goodies on the replay, apologies. So we're actually going to do a little bit of lateral neck work. So this feeds up into our lateral line. We're going to work our thumb this time, and there's 2 ways of doing this. You can either pin the tissue down, it's the way we've done before, so we can place just at the corner of the collarbone here, we can pin the hand one on top of the other, and we can turn our head until we feel a little bit of tension. And you can imagine right here, you already get tension. That would be your level 1. A level 2 would be that we'd actually grip, and that would be a little bit more intense. So let's just start with our level 1. We'll go through that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to pin the tissue down at the corner of the collarbone with our hand. And we're going to place the other hand on top, and this is just going to add an anchor point for the tissue. Just really make it easy for us to do the stretch as we kind of stretch away. So pin the tissue down. We're going to turn our head to add that tension into the tissue. I'm going to draw a square with our nose. So it takes a little bit of practice, but we're trying to keep that same angle with our chin. And we're just drawing that box with our chin. Once you get the hang of it, and once it starts to loosen up, there's 2 things you can do. You can reapply the pressure and pull that tissue away from the neck. Open up right here. And as long as no one's watching, because it'd be a little bit weird in the gym, you can open your mouth and move your jaw around. This works out really great. So you might feel all this tension kind of release from your jaw as well. Often misalignment with the jaw feeds into this lateral imbalance, weakness, and generally will actually reduce the strength of your glutes as well. So if you were to loosen up this area with that one stretch, you may find that your power increases significantly, okay? So same thing other side, we're going to pin down this tissue. So this time it's going to be our right hand, or my right hand, your left hand probably. We're pulling the tissue away slightly, so just off the collarbone. This hand's on top to anchor. Let's turn our head slightly. Let's draw that square. So we're turning our head slightly, drawing a square with our nose. Trying to keep that same angle with the head, which is actually really hard to do because I see a lot of people lose that tension. So as soon as you move your head, that tension will go. So just try and keep that same angle, okay? Just make sure you're breathing. Back. And this time, let's all look ridiculous together. Let's all move our jaw a little bit, and let's pin that tissue down, lift that head up. move that across. Move that jaw across. Excellent. So you can rinse and repeat that as many times as you need. As I say, it can be a big release for some people that get a lot of their tension from the lateral aspect of their body, move it up into their jaw, especially if you have any jaw issues. I'm going to turn on the commenting. Thanks so much for joining me this week. Apologies again about last week's technology failure. Hopefully we shouldn't have the same issues this week because I have 2 devices recording me at once and I'll repost the videos afterwards. Also, if you have any comments, anything you would like us to cover in next week's session, feel free to leave a comment in the video that we post afterwards for the live session. Otherwise, have a great week. Hopefully that's been really helpful, and I will see you next week for Mobility Magic on a Monday at 11:30. So have a great week, everyone. Speak to you soon.